Welcome to Pieces for My Puzzle. I'm your host, Nikki Shipp, and I'm excited to be sharing with you my life with a son on the spectrum. This podcast is for anyone who is looking for quick tips and perspective, but most of all, for hope and inspiration. So sit back, relax, and let's put the pieces together. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Pieces for My Puzzle. I'm your host, Nikki Shipp. Thank you so much for joining us today. Last week, we had the great honor and pleasure of speaking to Tracy Slepcevic, the author of a book called Warrior Mom. If you didn't get a chance to listen in, please go back and do so. It's a wonderful episode, and I feel so blessed that I got to speak with the Warrior Mom herself. This week, I'm so unbelievably excited for our guest. It's an honor and a privilege to have Jay Silverman on the show today. Jay is an acclaimed director, producer, and photographer with over 40 years of experience in film, television, digital, and print. His latest drama feature called Camera, starring Beau Bridges and Jessica Parker Kennedy, was recently released on Amazon and iTunes. Jay's previous works include the award-winning Girl on the Edge, romantic comedy Off the Menu, and true story drama Saving Paradise. He co-created and executive produced the drama series The Cleaner for Paramount Pictures and A&E. He has worked with renowned celebrities such as Denzel Washington, Beyonce, Michael Jordan, Quentin Tarantino, and Ray Charles. Some of his earlier directional work was for the original launches of the smash hit TV series American Idol, Desperate Housewives, NYPD Blues, Drew Carey Show, and this is just the shortened bio, folks, for those of you listening in today. He founded Jay Silverman Productions in 1979 and now operates out of a 40,000 square foot facility in Hollywood, California. He resides in Los Angeles with his 3 beautiful daughters. Please welcome Jay Silverman to the show. Jay, thank you so much for being here today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me, Nikki. It's a wonderful opportunity to share this film, and I'm thrilled that you enjoyed it.
I did very much, and I have to tell you that I was, I know I kind of said a little bit earlier before we started recording, but it really touched me in so many ways as the parent of a special needs child, and I was honored to be able to preview the film. For those of us that are listening in today, can you give a little bit to our listeners a brief summary about the film Camera?
Well, Camera is a drama about a young 9-year-old boy and his mother, who happens to be a recent widow. And the young boy moved to a small little community, fishing village, and he struggles from having what essentially is a mute inability to be able to speak, and subsequently gets into trouble almost immediately from the townspeople, which is a small community. And she gets into trouble too, treated not only disrespectfully, but, trying to juggle a challenged child with earning a living and adapting to a new community is part of what the story is about. And eventually the young little boy meets Beau Bridges' character named Eric, and together over the period of the film, they help one another. And what happens more or less, because the movie's called Camera, is you witness how a device like a camera can be a communication tool, no different than computers or other devices, to help this boy visualize and communicate what he's feeling inside. So it's
Right.
pretty extraordinary.
It really, really was. And I know we'll get into it in just a little bit, but Miguel Gabriel, who played Oscar, it was such a great, profound performance by him. I think I was constantly waiting to see too, like if he was going to try to speak until you really learn about his story, right? But I thought it was absolutely extraordinary. What influenced you basically to decide to direct the film?
Yeah, Bethany Sorona, who is my producer, seeks and reaches out for original content.
Mm-hmm.
And he discovered this script called Camera from a screenwriter named Jamie Murphy out of Ireland.
Okay.
And we read the script, and she recommended it uh, as something that I might be interested in. And what predominantly attracted me to it initially was the fact that it was about a little boy and his adventures with a camera. But
Mm-hmm.
what it developed into, which is, you know, the primary objective of most filmmakers, is to make the story richer.
Right.
And I was able to relate heavily to both the protagonists, both Bo Bridges' character and young Miguel's character named Oscar, because number one, I have a child that was born 3 months premature, and she um, essentially, because of errors at the hospital, they damaged her vocal cords by excessively incubating her improperly.
Oh my
And
goodness.
what
I,
ended up
gosh.
it's heartbreaking because we didn't know it for over a year, because obviously she was a preemie,
Right.
and she had tracheostomy and lung issues and all the collective things that transpire in the NICU. But as she grew older, we realized that uh, the vocal cords were unrepairable, and she now is 27 years old, but uh, she speaks, relatively well with the hisp, and
Right.
but she has had 27 years of bullying,
Yeah.
because even as much as recently during the pandemic, she was bullied. People would say, why are you coming to work sick? You must have COVID, and she would have to say, this is my real voice.
This is my
And it's
voice.
it's heartbreaking, because what I'm
Yeah.
describing to you is just a little illustration of how a filmmaker uses real life experiences to complement the work that he's working on.
Right.
And authenticity is a huge deal for filmmakers. You don't, especially in 2024, you're not likely going to make a movie with a 9-year-old protagonist that can't speak,
Right.
with a child that is um, incapable of understanding what that might look like. And
Right.
in Miguel's case, Miguel actually had a significant issue as a young child, and had significant therapy for both stuttering and an inability to overcome being bullied and all the other things acquainted by that. And
Really? Okay.
and it's ironic, because
Yeah.
my movie is really about inspiration that we all get from others. And in this particular case, he was ideal for the role. And as I know you just complimented him, I don't take any credit for his spectacular performance, because it, it's just extraordinary that we were able to find this young man.
Yeah, I had no idea that that was some of his background too, because one of the things I was going to ask you was what were the challenges of him portraying not having a voice? Because my immediate thought was it seemed so natural to him. I mean, I could tell what he was feeling. I could tell. It's almost like I could guess what he was thinking, even though he wasn't speaking. And I couldn't get over the fact that it was so articulate. Like it was very profound to me. And I just kept thinking, how did he step into that role? I had no idea that he had challenges himself when he was younger.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very interesting. Your listeners might find filmmaking and the idea of making movies about children with special needs. The reality of it is, this isn't my first movie.
Right.
I made a movie called Saving Paradise, and one of the characters was on the spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
And um, we were lucky enough, being in Los Angeles, to have had a casting agency in LA that specializes with disability actors,
Wow.
and so we were able to get this gentleman named George Steves, who not only fulfilled the role but knocked it out of the park.
Right.
Many people watch that movie, Saving Paradise, and say that's the best part of the movie, is watching that character.
Yeah.
and he is an extraordinary human being and an
Hmm.
extraordinary talent. But it's real, you know. I mean,
Right.
it's not
Yeah.
like you're asking a seasoned actor to pretend like he's on the spectrum, you know, which is these days questioned severely by the audience.
Yes. Yes. And that's kind of how I felt watching Miguel. He was just very authentic. So I was like, where is he pulling this from? But it, and I think that we underestimate. I would guess that you might not realize how profound those little actors can be, right? That they can be because of their own experiences already. Even as a child, I mean, he's still so young, but to know that he's had that experience to be able to step into that role and connect his character to Beau Bridges' character, Eric. And I couldn't get over it. Like I constantly wanted to see what was going to happen next to this kid. And I couldn't stand it that he was being bullied, and I wanted to be, and I was even, yelling with the mom, and I was, I felt like the need to protect him. But it also brings into play a lot of misconceptions that people have sometimes. And that was one thing that I noticed in the film was that, I think there was a scene where the nun was talking about, or one of the women were talking, and one of them said something like, well, he's just a strange boy. And, we just the conformity of what we think things should be and how they should be without really seeing somebody genuinely for who they are. And that's what really got me, because I think I feel that on a daily basis for my son. And I'm sure you have experienced that with your daughter too. It's just one of those things where you're like, I want people to really actually see them and not because they have an impairment.
You know, it's so interesting. I did yesterday a podcast with a special needs organization, and the woman who I spoke to uh, discussed her own child,
Mm-hmm.
uh, young daughter, and she went into a long discussion about all of the things that that child has that she doesn't compose, and nobody she knows composes. They're
Mm-hmm.
special. They're special things. I'm sure
Mm-hmm.
you have it with your son. I
Mm-hmm.
certainly have it with my daughter in a
Mm-hmm.
way that just blows me away when she starts giving wisdom out
Yes.
to
Yeah.
her sisters and her friends. She's the go-to person, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So it is not even a surprise anymore to me to
Mm-hmm.
know that there are unturned stones of just magical moments
Mm-hmm.
that this young man did in my movie without any direction on my behalf. And I don't
Right.
mean that to self-deprecate. I'm saying to you
Yeah.
that he had to have experienced that real world in order to
Yes.
do what he did.
Yeah. Yeah. And it definitely shows. And I think that at the end, it's very profound too, how people then that veil kind of lifts, right? And they see him for who he
For who he
is.
really is.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and I think that was probably the most touching thing, because I think for me as a parent, that's all I want for my son is for him to be seen. And that was really, it was very, like I said, I'm not gonna lie, I had a box of tissues. I had a box of tissues with me. I was like, I don't know if it's just me or if it's because I'm a 49-year-old perimenopausal woman or if it's all the above, but I could not get over how emotional I got over it. But I think it's because I can relate very, very deeply to it. And that was one of the things that I truly, truly enjoyed watching the film. And the Miguel did a phenomenal job playing Oscar. And Beau Bridges, I loved how he developed that friendship with his character Eric, developed that friendship with Oscar. I really loved how their friendship developed, and for Miguel to find a sense of true friendship from someone.
You know, that was something I knew that I wanted to do with this movie is the mentorship thing. And,
Yes.
you know, I will tell you, having a child that has special needs and being the recipient, um, I had, I wouldn't call it a disorder, but I was a real introvert, you know, when I was a
Mm-hmm.
young child. And the camera did give me an ability to communicate things that I wasn't able to articulate.
Mm-hmm.
And 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 so mentorship was really important to me when I set out to make this movie. And in so many respects, and you're a mother, you have a child that you adore, you love, but to have a third party come into the picture
Mm-hmm.
that isn't part of your DNA
Yes.
and and pollinate and make a level of comfort
Mm-hmm.
for the child to grow in a way that you can't do and I can't do is
Mm-hmm.
really something that was extraordinary for me. And
Right.
in the story that was originally written by the writer, it screamed of relevancy because we're in a world now where mentorships or that type of vehicle is less seen. You don't
Yeah.
hear about it very much anymore.
Right.
So that was very important to me. Very important.
Right. And I think there was I felt a lot of messaging about just love and connection as well. You know, the unconditional kind of love of finding that friendship or mentor, and formulating that connection. And it was like the more he got to know Oscar, the more he could read, you know, what he needed or what he wanted. And I thought that was really, really profound. And so I have to ask you, how do you hope that these themes will resonate with the audience viewing the film, especially those who do feel socially isolated and disconnected? Because I think that's something that we all kind of suffer from in this world today. I think there's disconnect. I think sometimes it's hard to remember how important connection is. So what is your hope for these themes to resonate with the audience viewing it?
Well, I have to share this with you. We had a screening in Los Angeles about 3 weeks ago. It was sold out, and there were four elderly ladies, older than me, that were
Mm-hmm.
all waiting to get in. And I say to them, they don't know that I'm the director, but I said, "So what brings you today?" And they go, "Well, we saw on social media a trailer of this movie Camera." And I go, "Well, that's my movie." And they go, "Oh, we're so excited to be here. We drove 2 hours."
Oh
And I
my
said,
gosh.
"Wow." I said, "So you're a group?" And they go, "Yeah, we're part of a support group of parents with children, with challenges." And
Oh
and the
my
lady
gosh.
says, "I have two children that are X," and another lady says, "And my child can't walk," and the other one says, they each explained to me all different capacities of
Mm-hmm.
challenges that parents have with their young children. And they go, "We don't care. It doesn't have to be eye for eye. It does not have to
Mm-hmm.
be story for story. My child will be inspired by this movie by watching that trailer because there's hope for all of us."
Mm-hmm.
And that's what was extraordinary for me as a filmmaker to hear because, it's not like, "Oh, you should go see that movie because you're deaf," or "You should go see that movie because they need
Right.
sign language." The
Right.
fact that a child is getting bullied is universal, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Totally universal. And when
Mm-hmm.
you look at what ails Oscar, he can't talk, is relatable if you're Down syndrome. It's relatable
Right.
if you're a child that can't see. Why? Because the communication is in the absence. You follow?
Right. Yes. Yeah.
And and that just really was fulfilling. Now, I originally set out to make a movie about a mentorship and a family and people that are in a small community, but this is a big plus. I never
Yeah.
anticipated this. So,
So much more than just that. Yeah. I mean, I think that was the thing too. Like I noticed that right away, but it was so much more for me. And I mean, it's been a long time since I've seen or viewed anything like that to make me feel like this would be something that somebody could watch and find a way to understand even my son Drayson a little bit better. The perspective of it. And that's how I felt watching the film. Because
thank
yeah, I mean, 100%. You know, I think it's an underestimated population of people that we don't give enough credit to because their talents are different, but they're, we inhibit from letting them really show those things sometimes, I think, because of our preconceived notions, or because, the bullying and all of these things, and then they mask it. We don't see their beautiful talents, like like Oscar with his picture taking, and how he's taking photos, and then how people really see what a connection that formulates and what he's trying to communicate, that's how he sees people. I mean, it's such a beautiful story in that aspect, because, all I kept thinking about for Oscar was, how long has he been behind the lens? How long has he been behind the lens and not in front of it? When I was watching it. So I think that the love and connection piece, I'm sure, like you said, you weren't expecting, but it was very strong for me. I can't get over saying how profound it was for me. But
you asked me a question in the your pre-correspondence with me about this subject. I have to tell you, said, how is it affecting other people? Mm-hmm. It's profound. This is my fourth movie.
Yes.
I have not gotten one negative response. Okay, and when I say that, I'm not talking about points. I'm talking about this idea. For example, my first movie is called Girl on the Edge. It's about my young daughter, who was 15, who got bullied in high school, got raped by a football star, and then got assassinated essentially on social media, to the extent where she was sampling drugs. And anyways, long of the short of it is, when I went to make that movie about her life, it was only because of, as a parent, and you could relate to this, who do you turn to when you have something like that happen? And it doesn't matter that in my case, my daughter got into trouble at school. What mattered, and your daughter and your son was born in a capacity that was unique. So I say to you, as a parent, I wanted to give back. So I made this movie, and it's about how equine therapy helped my daughter essentially survive. Okay. And I'm not sure she would be here today if it wasn't for the therapeutic system that occurred with her.
Right.
But every time I went and discussed that movie, there was always one person in the audience that would stand up and say, well, what about this little girl that got raped at one of those facilities? Or what about this place where a little boy was beat up?
Right.
You can't win. Do you see my point?
Oh, yeah.
And why do I say that? Because that one person that stood up, that, by God, I'm as empathetic as I could possibly be. That is horrid to hear that story. But to the extent of shutting down the whole system, look at all the loss you would have.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Because it did help my daughter and many of the people that I witnessed. But and when we talk about camera, I haven't even had that argument, because we lucked out that we had characters that were relatively familiar with the ailments that they were playing.
Right.
And of course, Bo Bridges is, I think it's one of the best roles he's ever done. Why? Because he fit right into it. He's got grandchildren. He understands the value of the connectivity. So it was really fulfilling.
Yeah. No, his role was so sweet. I loved how he was just very taken, to interact with Oscar because of they had that commonality of the camera. And, it makes me go back and think, where's my focal point with my son? Like, where's his interests, and how have we developed those interests so that I can find a way to connect with him? Like, he loves trains. So I think I know more about steam engine trains than I care to even tell you. But I can connect with him that way, and then draw him out into other facets of conversation by just starting with something as simple as talking to him about trains, or even bringing him out while we're actually, setting up train tracks and stuff. And that's what I noticed with Bo Bridges' character was like, helping him with the camera, showing him how to develop film. And then all of a sudden these other conversations are coming out. And I think and I talk to a lot of parents about this in the special needs community, about find what that connection is, find what that point of interest is, and go from there. Because if you want to draw them out, because they also need to feel safe. The one thing I really picked up too about Oscar was that he, at first, I mean, I don't think he felt safe, just because he's already been bullied and he's already tried to communicate and he's already been mistreated. And so I think that was another big thing, was when you see him start to, decompress a little bit, all of a sudden he trusts and feels safe with Eric. And I thought that was really great. And I identified with that because, like I said, I talked to a lot of special needs parents about that. Find where that interest is for both of you, and figure out how to draw them out.
But you see, Nikki, and I'm telling you this because you're a mother and you talk to people every day. Some of the most fulfilling parts for me as a filmmaker is to exhibit truth.
Mm-hmm.
And when I look at the Jessica Parker character who plays the mom, I'll say this publicly because I think it's incredibly important. This woman not only has a child that is super intelligent, but has a child that can't speak. And she had just lost her husband, and then to compound that, she's being, teased and battered by
Mm-hmm.
people at her workplace.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to say this to you and share it with you because we submitted the script to many people we respected. And one writer in particular wrote back that he definitely should soften the mother and make her, more available for the kid and more, for lack of a better word, fulfilling.
It's not real life, though.
It's not real.
It's not real
Bingo.
life.
You
Yeah.
just read my mind. You
Yeah.
just read my mind. Because you see, to me, the fact that she's got to juggle a job to survive, the fact that she's got a child that she's doing everything she can possibly do to make his life better, the
Yeah.
fact that she's misunderstood, he's misunderstood, is human behavior. We
Right.
all have done it. If
Yeah.
you asked me what my life was with my daughter, I would say I made a lot of mistakes,
Mm-hmm.
But what you just described to me about learning about trains and so forth, about your own child, um, this is the magic of filmmaking, is
Mm-hmm.
if you can tell a story. I just saw a movie called I Used to Be Famous on Netflix, and it's a drama about a child on the spectrum who is a drummer. And I found the movie more fulfilling to just watch the mother. Why? Because she had sacrificed her entire life for this child,
Yeah.
gave up her career as a ballerina to take care of her child.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the movie is incredibly inspiring. But what made it fulfilling to me was to see the truth.
Yeah.
We all do that. We
Yeah.
all give up. Your husband does. You do. Whatever you composite, you're learning every day. Every
Oh,
day.
yeah.
And
Absolutely.
anyways, I just want you to know, that Bethany, who is one of my producers, she fought for the character of Jessica in the movie. Why? Because as a woman, the truth is
Mm-hmm.
more important than creating and sculpting a character that's too perfect.
Right. Right. 100%. Yeah. And I felt her pain. I felt her worry. I felt all of it. And I think that that's something too, in terms of even the isolation and connection. It's important for us as parents too. There are times where I have felt so much isolation, and even with the support system, you still feel alone in your situation sometimes. And it's hard not to feel, almost a little angry about it, but at the same time, that you're just trying to manage the daily grind of everything. It's the laundry list of things. And so for me, even trying to take that step back and sit down with Drayson and do trains, like every afternoon, sit down and do trains, was something that I had to intentionally plan to do. It wasn't something and at first it wasn't something I wanted to do. It just felt like another chore, another thing I had to add on my list, because you're just doing, 10 million things in a day. And I remember when the caseworker in the movie shows up to talk to the mom, I almost laughed, because I know what that feels like. I call them the he still has autism meetings is what I call them, because it's just that continual revisit. And it's like, well, it's not going away. It's still here, and it's hard. And it's hard when you continually feel like you have to repeat yourself and to try to explain things. And I kept feeling for her, because I thought, how many times does she have to feel like she's explaining herself or sticking up for something, or being, even the way she was with Oscar. I know sometimes it seems like for some people that might have seemed a little harsh, but that's really the reality of the situation.
Exactly. I listened to your podcast yesterday, whichever one is the most, where you have a gentleman on there speaking about straightening out your priorities and so forth.
Yeah. I was probably with Russ.
And I listened to it for 20 minutes on my drive in, and it was profound to the extent that I sat down with my best friend at breakfast, who knows my whole life story, and I'm much older than you, so I can tell you that he said something to me that was so profound, and your guest would be equally as interested, because here I am. I raised 3 kids, 2 of them very challenged, and as I'll tell you, as you get older, this never ends. Okay.
No, I believe it. No, my oldest is 28, and so I definitely understand, because it's just a different kind of worry the older they get.
Exactly. But my oldest is 30, and my youngest is 26. So I'm saying to you, mechanically speaking, my friend leans into me and he goes, how's your kids today? And for the first time, I said, this one's doing great, this one's doing great, and this one's doing great. And he says, Jay, now's the time for you to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
And I looked at him and I was like thinking, wow, I didn't even have to pay for that advice. And why do I say that? Because I'm telling you, your guest is right on the money. I went to Napa for a wedding a couple of weeks ago, and do you think that I had 1 minute of solitude? No way. Worrying with one daughter on the phone. I was at a wedding getting texted by the other daughter. Right. When have I ever thought just about myself? And the truth is he's got some good advice. I just haven't shared that with him.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's why I also felt for Oscar's mom, because she didn't have those moments. It's like there was no, she didn't have a spare moment. It just constantly, she was running and going and going and going. And I think a lot of parents can identify with how that feels, So, well, for our listeners listening in today, next week we're going to deep dive more into the emotional depth of this movie. But I hope that you guys please stay tuned for next week. For now, this concludes our episode for today. If you have questions, comments, or even a show topic that you would like to hear about, please feel free to send me an email at info@piecesformypuzzle.com. I'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to like and follow us on Facebook and Instagram, or subscribe to our YouTube channel if you'd like. If you like what you're hearing, please spread the word to others. This would help. And feel free to give us a good rating on your preferred podcast platform of choice. Thanks again for tuning in. And until next time, keep working on your puzzle. And remember, you don't have to have it all solved in a day. Take care.